The Heritage of the Bhikkhu. Section. National and Religious Degeneration. So, in the manner described earlier, with missionaries imported from foreign countries with government assistance, schools were opened in different parts of the country. Through these schools, the British government began to spread Christianity and Western culture and convert Buddhists to Christianity. All social and welfare activities hitherto undertaken by bhikkhus fell into the hands of these missionaries, and their power loomed large. Because of the privileged position of the missionaries, their help and assistance were sought. The intervention of the missionaries was necessary even to secure employment. A certificate issued by a missionary was respected by the government. Moreover, the government favored Christians. A Buddhist had no place in the higher strata of society. He did not belong to the elite. Therefore, for the sake of materialistic gains, many Sinhalese embraced Christianity. Buddhists were reluctant to profess their faith in public places such as the law courts and the catcheries. Foreign missionaries taught the Sinhalese children to look down upon and despise Sinhala Buddhist culture as low and base, a thing inferior, and to value and appreciate Christian culture as immeasurably superior. Footnote. A recent incident comes to my mind as an illustration. Presiding at the prize giving of the Good Shepherd's Convent in Colombo on March 8, 1947, Dr. J. M. Masson, the Archbishop of Colombo, earnestly advised the Sinhalese and the Tamil children to abandon their queer names and use the names of the Catholic saints. What he termed queer names are Sinhalese and Tamil national names. The names he advocated are foreign Christian names. This is how children were taught to despise their own culture and to adore the Western culture. End footnote. Those Sinhalese who forsook Buddhism and embraced Christianity despised Sinhala Buddhist habits and customs, discarded Sinhalese names and dress, and imitated Western styles. They scorned the Sinhala language and looked down on Sinhalese literature as a thing of no value or significance. They were prouder of Rome or Canterbury than of Anuradhapura or Polonnaruwa. They even began to think of England as their motherland instead of the mother Lanka, Ceylon. It was this attitude which encouraged people, particularly the growing generation, to despise their own heritage and take up an alien culture which brought about the decline of Sinhala Buddhist culture, the foundation of the Sinhala nation. If a nation loses its own culture, it cannot hope for freedom or development. It can only expect degeneration and slavery. With the missionaries asserting their power under the Christians, the position of the bhikkhu began to deteriorate. As the Buddhist monks could not adapt themselves to suit the changed political, economic, and social situation, they were rendered useless to society. Nor did they receive an education to prepare them for these new conditions. They had no plan of action. Their word was no more respected. Laymen had nothing to learn from them. Therefore, laymen, particularly those of the upper class, dissociated themselves from the bhikkhus, and the bond between the laity and the clergy declined. Bhikkhus lost their places and positions in society. Functions and privileges which they had enjoyed hitherto were usurped by, or fell into the hands of, the missionaries. Thus the bhikkhu, circumscribed both with regard to personality and education, was, by force of circumstances, driven to limit his activities to the recitation of the suttas, Pirit chanting, preaching a sermon, attendance at funeral rites and almsgivings in memory of the departed, and to an idle, cloistered life in the temple. In spite of this melancholy and abject situation into which the bhikkhu was forced, any remnants of Sinhala Buddhist culture in the country, particularly in the rural areas, however significant they might have been, had ultimately been preserved and maintained by the bhikkhus themselves. Whatever depths of calamity these venerable monks had sounded, whatever hardships they had to face, they never forgot that Sinhala Buddhist culture was their noblest heritage and treasure. The reader will recall that in ancient Ceylon, Buddhism and Sinhala culture were inseparable. The ancient Sinhalese could think of no national development without religion, and no religious development without nation. Christian missionaries, however, taught the Sinhalese to think of national development as something apart from religious development. This was necessary for them to convert Buddhists to Christianity. To the ancient Sinhalese, Buddhism was the greatest national treasure. According to them, therefore, a Sinhalese had to be a Buddhist. The glory of the Buddhist culture and civilization of the Sinhala nation, its unity and progress, was its consequence. But from the day the Sinhalese were taught to think of the nation and the religion as things apart, unrelated to each other, they shamelessly became Christians. To a Sinhalese, conversion to Christianity was a stigma. Sinhalese society looked down upon such converts. It should be clearly understood that what the Sinhalese Buddhists opposed was not the religious teaching of Jesus of Nazareth, but a religion together with an alien civilization propagated by the imperialists as a mode of destroying patriotism and national culture, and establishing foreign rule in Ceylon. In this way, Christianity came to be identified with imperialism and anti-nationalism. Footnote. It is gratifying to note here that many Ceylonese Christians are now realizing their past mistakes, and are beginning to appreciate and accept national traditions, customs, and institutions. End of footnote and end of section.